just too much.
Okay, we're live now.
Deborah.
Victor, I have 6:30 now, so I'm going to start the webinar and we should start to see, hopefully start to see attendees join us as well.
Great.
And when you're ready to start the meeting, I need to call the roll.
Yes, sir. Just gonna give it like another minute or so.
Deborah, will you need to share your screen tonight?
Yeah, I put a little presentation together.
Okay, I'm going to make you a co-host then.
Hey, you know what, Jeremy, let's begin. You can call the roll. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to mute everybody right now. Committee members, when I call your name, please unmute yourself, acknowledge your name, and then mute yourselves once again. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I'm not going to call your name, but I will write your name down. Victor Swinton.
Present.
Thank you. Joan Body.
Here,
Thank you. Sylvia Augusto. Sylvia. Johanna Bjorken. Stacy Boyd. Joseph Canale. Christina Das. Mary Jo Eister.
Present.
Thank you. Nicole Huang. John Fontillis. John Johnston. Gabino Morales. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Gabino Morales. Daniel Murphy.
Here.
Thank you. Fred Wolf. Jennifer Yip.
Here.
Thank you. Victor, roll has been called. Victor? If I believe you're still muted.
I am. Again, good evening, everyone. Sorry about that. Today we have two things on the agenda, a presentation by the Prospect Park Alliance. We do have a member of that alliance here, Deborah Kirshner. And also, even though we did at the board meeting discuss our capital expenses and our other expenses, we put our budgetary things in order. I just want to get some ideas from the board, what we should be pressing for as we move forward with the committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Deborah now. Again, thank you for having us today. Thank you for joining us. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you all tonight. As I said, I'm Deborah Kirshner. I'm the Vice President of Communications and External Relations at Prospect Park Alliance, and we're the nonprofit that operates the park in partnership with the city. I know a lot of you know us already. I do want to also introduce my colleague, Alexis McKenzie, Paulin Edwards, who's on the phone too and helped to, or on the Zoom too, excuse me, and helped to coordinate our participation tonight. So Alexis McKenzie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Good evening.
Welcome. I apologize for not introducing you. Welcome.
Oh, no, please, no worries. And yes, Alexis McKenzie is our community relations coordinator, and she operates our correspondences and also is a liaison for all of you with any queries about the park. So I was going to share my screen. I was just going to take you through a brief presentation just to update you on some of the activities that the Alliance has undertaken this year. So give me 1 second and I will share my screen. Let's see. So just give me 1 second. Make sure you can see my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Good.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So, great. So as I mentioned, Prospect Park Alliance operates the park in partnership with the city. We're a private nonprofit organization. Over the past several years, we have certainly seen Prospect Park is Brooklyn's backyard. And, even before the pandemic, just with the increase of people moving to and living in Brooklyn, we've seen a really high, we've seen the number of people coming to the park each year really increasing. And during the pandemic, we really had a spike and it hasn't really slowed down since. So people are really enjoying our spaces, enjoying the outdoors, enjoying it as a gathering space, a community space. When the pandemic first hit, both the Parks Department and the Alliance suffered some immediate cuts, and this impacted our ability to operate the park to the level that we wanted to. But over the past 2 years, we have seen a great outpouring of support from the community, both in terms of donors and volunteers. And that's really positioning the Alliance well for our future work in the park. In addition, the Parks Department budget was restored, although it remains severely underfunded. As many of you might know, there's an advocacy campaign to increase the budget for parks. The parks budget has remained at about 50%, 0.5% of the full city budget is dedicated to parks, which is really low when you consider that parks comprise 14% of all city land. So we really work closely with our partners, other nonprofits, the group New Yorkers for Parks, to help advocate for more city funding. They say this year was the highest budget ever because it went up to 0.6%. But every little bit helps, and that type of increase helps directly benefit the park through additional city park workers for trash maintenance, park enforcement officers, and urban park rangers. So the Alliance and our role in the park, just for anyone who's not clear, we like to say that we take care of the blue and green of the park, and the Parks Department takes care of the gray. So a majority of our operating budget goes towards landscape maintenance, taking care of all, like the 250 acres of woodlands in the park, the 60-acre lake and the park's water course, the 30,000 trees. And that's where a lot of our operating budget goes to. We also provide recreation programs and education programs for the public. We have an in-house office of landscape architecture and design that does restoration work for all of our buildings and landscapes. So it's a lot. And this slide just kind of gives a few kind of numbers and stats as far as what we're able to accomplish in a year's time. So I was mentioning that during the pandemic, we saw an uptick in support. And for some of that support, we really put it back into the care of the park through an initiative that we're calling Renew Prospect Park. We're in our second year of it, and it includes a few different aspects of work. And it's all addressing sort of the heavy usage that the park is seeing. So trash management is primarily the purview of the Parks Department. That's sort of their part of the public-private partnership in the park. But trash is the huge challenge that we have in the park, particularly with the explosive use of the park. So the Alliance tries to supplement that. We have different ways that we supplement it. We do provide for some groundskeepers in the park. But through the Renew initiative, we've actually entered into a partnership with the nonprofit ACE New York, which is an organization that works with homeless men and women throughout New York City. It's a workforce development program. And we fund a 5-person maintenance crew that collects trash throughout the park on peak weekdays and weekends in the peak time of year, so April through October. And then we've also funded larger trash receptacles throughout the park just to bolster the canisters that are provided by the Parks Department. And then we do try to do a lot of promotion and education about people carrying in and carrying out their trash in the park and try to engage people to support the park in that way. We've also invested some funding in park improvements. So adding new picnic tables and barbecues to some of the barbecue areas. Renewing the interiors of some of the comfort stations, fixing park pathways and drainage. And we've also engaged our volunteers. So we've seen an uptick in volunteers in the park. So we have a Renew volunteer corps that's been filling holes in the long meadow, repairing benches and fences, refreshing sandboxes and playgrounds, and helping us clean our rustic structures and our historic structures. And then the other way that the volunteer program has been involved is through programs that we've had in the past several years to get the public out helping us with trash collection, which has been a huge help. So we have a program called Green and Go Kits where people can get trash grabbers and trash bags and gloves and help pick up trash in different areas of the park. We also have It's My Park Monday. So after busy weekends on Monday mornings, we have volunteers out helping the Parks Department's maintenance crews with trash pickup. And then just really working with Parks Enforcement Patrol and with our own staff, both to educate people about carry and carry out, but also with large gatherings, trying to get people to, trying to make sure that, unpermitted large gatherings are not happening in the park or not happening at such an extent that it creates a maintenance challenge. So our volunteers have been really amazing. Last year, we engaged more than 1,250 community members over the course of 2,000 volunteer events, or sessions, I should say, sorry. So that means that some of these volunteers volunteered over multiple times, and they cleaned up nearly 2,500 bags of trash. So, and this is also a fun thing we did this summer. We did a stewardship campaign, Summer of Stewardship. It was called a Be a Park Champion campaign. We had a park pledge people could take. We created a mascot, which you can see there in the tree, called Thelonious Chipmunk. The idea is to really get the public engaged and educated in how they can help steward the park. So other things in terms of highlights of the Alliance's work over the past year, as I said, a huge part of our operating budget and focus is on ecological restoration and caring for Brooklyn's last remaining forest and only lake. So we do semi-annual plantings where we plant thousands of trees and shrubs and plugs, little plants, ground cover throughout the natural areas of the park. We have a wonderful youth employment program called the Woodlands Youth Crew, which puts youth to work in ecological restoration in the park. So they've been creating a lot of beautiful woodland pathways, new ways for people to access our woodlands and enjoy them while learning about careers in that field. And then we have a really successful commemorative tree program where people can raise funds to plant a tree in the park. And that has really been very successful in recent years. It's been helping us to re-landscape areas of the park where there's been trees that have been lost due to disease or severe storms. So it's all different ways for the community. It's a way that the community can get involved and help to support our efforts in the park. We've also been really busy on the capital front. We've had a lot of funding we've received from our electeds that have enabled us to do some wonderful projects in the park. So some of the projects we're undertaking right now in the upper left corner, you may have heard us talk about this. We did a lot of community outreach about this, but we're restoring a number of acres in the northeast corner of the park, somewhat like along Flatbush, within the park along Flatbush Avenue from Grand Army Plaza to just north of the zoo. We are doing woodland restoration in there and adding some new amenities and a comfort station. And that's through funding from Mayor de Blasio. And we did a significant amount of community outreach around that project to get ideas from the community for its restoration, because it's an area of the park that has changed in its design several times. So we're not as beholden to landmarks laws. And we did another round of outreach earlier this year, which then led into our designers starting the design phase. So we're in design right now on this project. We would expect it to go into construction, hopefully in 2024. And be completed by 2026. We also received funding from the previous administration to restore the Soldier and Sailors Arch at Grand Army Plaza, as well as do some restoration to the plaza area itself and the 3 landscaped berms that surround it. So that project's actually going into construction now. The berms are well underway, and that work should wrap up by next fall. And then the restoration of the plaza and the arch should be starting this spring. And those projects, they each take a year. So the berms will wrap up next fall, and then the arch and the plaza should wrap up by next spring. On the bottom left-hand corner is the park's historic house. So we operate Lefferts Historic House in the park. It's located near the zoo and the carousel along Flatbush at the Empire Boulevard entrance, just across from the Botanic Gardens Children's Garden. And that is a historic house from Flatbush from the 1700s. And we did a restoration of the exterior, put a new roof on it, refinished the house, and it's going to reopen in May of 2023. One thing that we are starting work on is rethinking the programming at the house. The house was a site of slavery, and not many people are really well educated in the history of slavery in Brooklyn. So we're looking to change the mission and programming at the historic house to really better tell the story of slavery in Brooklyn and try to tell the stories of the actual enslaved Africans and even the indigenous communities that had inhabited the land and had worked the land. And then lastly, we've been slowly making progress on the 7 ball fields at the Long Meadow, thanks to former council member Brad Lander. We're currently in construction with the last of the ball fields to be restored. The work is slowly wrapping up on that, and the ball fields will reopen for play in spring. So lots of great projects currently underway. And then, you know, a big part of our mission is engaging the community, and we have many ways of doing that. I had mentioned to you our volunteer program. We also have a really successful program that we launched the last couple of years for education. We do operate the Prospect Park Audubon Center, which was closed due to the pandemic until this year. But even with it reopened, we have a pop-up Audubon and program where we go out in the park and we have nature education programs for children. And that's been very successful. And then we have some great partnerships with community groups. So we've been collaborating with BRIC, who organized the Celebrate Brooklyn Festival, to do public art installations during the months when the bandshell is not in use for the festival. So this is actually not the Brooklyn High Art Machine. I realized I had this mislabeled. This is an artist named Emily Oliveira that you see on the bottom left-hand corner. We just launched a new installation by an artist named Sarah Brooks that will be up through next spring. Then we have a wonderful collaboration with Caribbean, which is a Caribbean American cultural organization located in Flatbush. And this just shows they had a kind of a shipping container store that was opened during the holiday season last year at Lakeside. This is not going to be back this year, but we are looking at different types of programming that we'll be doing with Caribbean throughout the year. And lastly, we've had a lot of success for future projects in the park and advocating with our new elected. So one of our biggest upcoming projects is the restoration of the lake shore. So we're looking to restore the perimeter of the lake from Lakeside, which was a huge restoration we did a few years back, about 10 years ago now, all the way up to the well house in the peninsula. It's a $20 million project. And in the past year, we received about $1 million from the city council and another $1 million from the mayor to start work on this. So we're about to have a public meeting in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to be designing a master plan for the restoration of the lake and then also implementing the design and construction of one section of it. And then we will continue to be advocating for funding in future budget cycles to continue to do more of the lake shore. And the goal of that project is to improve its resiliency from severe storms. We've seen a lot of flooding of the lake, to improve like its habitat for wildlife, and also accessibility and visitor experience, improving the pathways, making it safer and more accessible for public enjoyment. We also received funding from Council Member Rita Joseph to restore one of the ball fields at the parade, one of the playing fields at the parade ground, but also to restore a beautiful pergola at the park side and ocean entrance to the park, which is sort of the final piece in a full restoration of that entrance that is has been funded by a few different groups, the DOT, the mayor, former council member Matthew Eugene. And this past year, we also did well with participatory budgeting. We got funding to restore one of the historic bridges at the ravine, as well as add more lighting to some of the major pathways within the ravine. And we're closing off work on a safety study of the Park Drive, which actually was participatory budgeting funded from last year. We were able to hire a traffic consultant, and we've produced a safe traffic study to make safety recommendations on how to improve the Park Drive. And we hope to be able to release that to the public in the next coming months. It's sort of internally being vetted right now by the Parks Department and the DOT. So I said a lot. That's sort of it in a nutshell of some of the work going on at the organization. These are different ways in which you can reach us. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Sure, Debbie. Thank you very much. My question is just that if you could send this power presentation to the board, I would definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to. Not a problem at all.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I see some raised hands. I don't know if you want to moderate that.
Yeah, I will. Actually, I'm going to ask Jeremy for his help. If anyone has questions, please raise your hand, and we'll call on you to ask your question.
Happy to take care of that, Victor. I have Beverly Kleiman first.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for the presentation. That was lovely. I live about 8 blocks away from the park, and I'm wondering if, like every other place in the city, we have a problem there with rats and what's being done about that. And I also have raccoons on my property. I don't know if that's something that you see very often in the park. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so you were asking about rat issues in Prospect Park?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some areas of the park that are very attractive to rats. As you can imagine, we have lots of people, lots of food, so rats love it in the park. The Parks Department does have a protocol for addressing rats. It's humane and environmentally friendly. We have a big hawk population in the park, so they actually the way that they abate and control the rat populations is through dry ice. They put dry ice in the sort of burrows that the rats create underground. And we've been informed by the Parks Department's maintenance supervisors that there's a couple of areas in the park where there's really large rat populations. So there's a huge focus on trying to control that. And those are some of the areas along Ocean Avenue. So Imagination Playground, Lincoln Road entrance. If you ever have areas of the park where you're seeing rat infestations, Please be in touch with us. You can use this community@prospectpark.org. We also have info@prospectpark.org, and we can alert the maintenance team. So always let us know. And then in terms of raccoons, we do have a lot of raccoons in the park. They don't really cause any issues. They're wildlife, so we don't really address them. Where we do pay attention to them is when it comes to disease. There's distemper, which is a disease that raccoons can get. So the Parks Department, again, is sort of the entity that takes care of wildlife, but we help support it. We have one staff person whose job is, part of her job is wildlife, as a wildlife technician. So she works really close with the urban park rangers and the wildlife unit at the Parks Department to identify and help manage any wildlife issues. But we don't have any we don't have any significant issues with the raccoons right now. There had been a little bit of distemper, but it didn't come to the point of being a well, I don't know if the word is I'm looking for. It didn't become like a breakout or whatever you want to call it. So it was monitored and under control, and it seems to be lessening in the park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have John Johnston next.
Oh, hello. I know this is going to sound like a broken record, but the conditions of the playgrounds in Prospect Park is disappointing, at least. Harmony is okay. It's not, I'm not like, jumping up and down about it, but Vanderbilt is not very good. I mean, it has that like fake stream in it that with the run, and it has a big, and kids constantly trip over that. The mats are coming out from the ground. The equipment is okay. I mean, it's not terrible, but the condition of the floor of Vanderbilt, it's not really safe. And
yeah, I think so. I guess I would say twofold. I'd say the park has a lot of capital needs, and we do our best to prioritize them. All the playgrounds in the park are very old at this point, and there's many that are in worse condition than Vanderbilt, believe it or not. I think it's twofold. I think if there are safety concerns in that playground, please contact us and give us more specifics on the safety concerns, because the Parks Department needs to address any safety concerns. Anything that could cause harm to the public or pose a hazard needs to be addressed. So please let us know what that is. In terms of the how new the equipment is, so the way it works with capital in the park is the Parks Department does not have its own capital budget.
Right,
they have
right.
to advocate for any funding they
Yes.
need. One of the things the Alliance does is we help to advocate for funding for the park. We usually, the way that we determine our priorities is just taking an overview of the whole park and the most like highly used areas that are in most need of restoration, but also we're in conversation with our local council members and their interests and priorities and what they're hearing from their constituents. So I'll be really transparent with you. Right now, we have been advocating with Council Member Rita Joseph, with the Brooklyn Borough President, to see if we can get funding to restore the 3 playgrounds that we feel are the oldest and have had the least have had restoration the longest ago, which is the 3rd Street Playground,
okay.
the Lincoln Road Playground, and Imagination Playground. So we brought it to the attention last year. I know Rita Joseph tried to get it on the Brooklyn delegation list for the speaker, because the speaker has a bigger pot of money. We do plan to go back to her again this year to see if we can get funding for that. Vanderbilt is not at the top of our list, just in assessing the other playgrounds, but at the same time, any type of safety hazards or basic maintenance needs to be addressed. That's like not a question. So I would say to get in touch with us and give us more specific details on the conditions you're finding, and we'll talk to the park supervisors and try to get more
I mean,
information
how
on that
much
front.
how much money goes out of Prospect Park Alliance to the other parks in North Brooklyn and other parts of Brooklyn? I mean, I was told that through the Parks Equity Program, the conservancies have to shift money to other parts of Brooklyn in order to help them, and sometimes very underutilized parks.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting so that was an initiative of the past administration. I would say one thing is conservancies are all different, and we are not a conservancy that's at our top capacity yet. Like, we're actually in the early quiet stages of a campaign to like double our operating budget and our endowment. We are, our primary focus where our operating budget goes is in the care of the park's natural areas. And right now we have like 6 dedicated gardeners for like 562 acres. So we have more staff that we need just to do the basics that we're supposed to do in the park. We did not give any type of funding to other parks through the park's equity. When we participated in the park's equity, it was actually in kind. It was we had staff that designed playgrounds for other areas of the city. So we gave our in-kind design expertise and staffing to design 3 playgrounds, but that's over now. And I don't think that initiative is still
Okay,
ongoing.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I have Joan Body next.
Good evening. I also want to thank you for your presentation. It was very, very good. Has the Park Alliance ever considered placing benches along the Southwest Drive? There is not one bench on the entire drive. So it's really, really important for people with small children. And as we're getting up there in age, every once in a while, we do have to sit down.
Yeah, and you're talking about the park perimeter, like the sidewalk on the park side of the street on Prospect Park West.
Yes, I live on, no, not west, southwest.
Southwest, that's what I
live
meant.
closest-
Sorry,
I
yes.
live on 16, on the north side
Right,
of 16th Street and the 16th Street entrance.
right.
And when you go into that entrance, the entire length of Prospect Park Southwest has not one bench.
Okay. Yeah, so what
Yeah.
I would say for that, because that was brought to my attention before this meeting, that is the type of project that would be ideal for participatory budgeting. So as we mentioned before, the Parks Department doesn't have a capital budget. Those types
And
of projects.
unfortunately, I am not able to attend or participate in the participatory budgeting. But yes, that is a very, very, very good issue for that process. But
I mean,
in
we
the
do
interim-
get request, like we do get the council members coming to us to ask us if there's projects that we think could be good for participatory budgeting. So it's something we could bring to their attention as something that was raised by, raised to us. So, you bringing that up to us, we could discuss it with our local council members. And the way participatory budgeting works is like it gets kind of discussed by different delegates, and then it gets placed on a ballot. So we can certainly bring that up. I mean, the other direction something like that could go is state of good repair funding that the Parks Department gets, which is funding they have to do kind of like specific maintenance projects in specific parks. So that's something that could be brought up with the Borough Parks Commission to
Yeah.
see if it could be
It
considered.
It really seems that the southwest side is completely neglected time in and time again. So I'd appreciate that very, very much. And
Yeah,
Thank you,
and I
Mike.
see John Johnston brought it up about bringing it up as either PB or state of
Yeah.
good repair. So yeah, let me know, John, I could also mention to the Borough Commissioner's office that this was brought up to us.
Yeah, I'm on participatory budgeting, so. I can
Oh,
do it.
that's great. Okay, that's great. Perfect.
So you'll be able to bring that up, John?
Yeah, I'll shoot you. I was not paying 100% attention. I apologize, but I will. I'll email you, and you can give me the idea. I'll put it on the list. No.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. And thanks again, Deborah.
Yeah, of course. Sorry too. I was I noticed my presentations at CB8. You can see we're going the rounds to all the community boards. So I apologize for not updating my slideshow.
I have Johanna Bjorken next.
Hi there, and sorry I was a couple minutes late today. What John was saying about the equity was what I was going to ask about, because like it's really great hearing about all of these resources that Prospect Park gets to have because it has an alliance. And when we did our walkthrough with Marty in Sunset Park just a few weeks, like I guess it was a couple months ago, like it just kept going, well, Prospect Park has an alliance, Prospect Park has the alliance. And so what has to happen to get that equity project back? Because I'm not feeling very good right now about the Prospect Park Alliance. If like it's just like, oh well, it's over.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I think what I meant is that, we're a nonprofit that raises money specifically for Prospect Park. So when donors come to us, they expect the funds to remain in the park. And it sounded like that question was asking if funds are being taken from Prospect Park and brought to other parks, where we don't even have the funding we need to operate the park at the level that it needs to be operated. We are not against equity. We lend our expertise and we lend our voice to many parks across the country. We're really involved in the Play Fair campaign with New Yorkers for Park, which seeks to get 1% of the Parks Department's budget, the 1% of the city budget to be for parks. We testify at every hearing, we lend our voice, we lend our weight towards that. It's a challenging sort of like chicken and egg situation with alliances. We were founded in the mid-'80s when the park was in a great state of disrepair and the city did not have the funds to take care of it. We were founded by concerned citizens and we grew over time to the point where we're managing the park in partnership with the Parks Department. But it is unfortunate that parks need to go that direction to be able to get the funds they need to take care of themselves. And we are a big advocate of getting the 1% for parks so that there can be equity and more resources devoted for care of parks.
Yeah. I guess I sort of see it in a very similar vein towards PTAs. And there's a huge movement right now with PTAs to get PTAs to share their resources, even though schools never are always underfunded and every school could use as much funding as it could. There's a huge recognition in the inequity that just even having a PTA that can raise these kinds of funds creates in terms of just what happens to the perception of what a school should have and how is appropriate for schools to be funded. And I think that you could really, really learn from and adopt some of the conversations that are happening around PTAs. You're not unique. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole talking about capitalism if I'm not careful. So
I know it's really hard.
Now.
I will say like some of the more well-funded conservancies like Central Park Conservancy, they have a significant budget. They're able to not only take care of their own park, but do many other things. They have like a 5-borough crew that provides like resources, take care of other parks. We'd love to be in that position. We're just not there yet. Our budget is significantly under what we need to even take care of Prospect Park well. And we're pretty spread thin. Like I said, we have 6 gardeners for 562 acres of park. So we're not really resourced to the point where we have resources to bring to other parks, but we also really believe that the Parks Department should be fully funding parks and that parks are essential. So a big focus for us is on the lobbying and like really working to advocate for 1% for parks so that the Parks Department is funded at the level it needs to be funded at.
Thank you. I have a little more information on that in the second agenda item. I have Mary Eister next.
Works better. Okay. Hi, Deborah. Thank you. As everyone said, wonderful presentation. My question is similar to some, but it's actually in a slightly different vein. I moved to Windsor Terrace in 1981. So, I don't live in Windsor Terrace anymore, but I have lived in the neighborhood and used the park for that long. And I'm a birder and I was an ice skater and I had kids who used the playgrounds. One of the things that I think is a perennial issue for probably most parks, certainly Prospect, certainly Sunset, is the push and pull between competing interests and and who gets to use what areas for what purposes. So as an avid bird watcher, I want it all to be natural. You know, I want, like, you know, no bikes and no dogs, nothing. But obviously I'm not making the decisions. But my question is, who is? How are those competing interests evaluated and balanced? And is there kind of like an overall, I don't know, game plan for how much and what areas and what uses get priority? Just how are those decisions made?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's so funny. We had, it was the 150th anniversary of the park in 2017, and the Brooklyn Historic Society did this whole exhibit on the history of Prospect Park. And these questions have been happening since the park opened. There's like been competing interests in the park over the years. And as you've seen, like different fads come and go for a long time, like lawn tennis was really popular in the park, and the historic tennis house we have was to serve that population. So it's really hard to answer that because it's like a lot of different factors come into play when it comes to use of the park. The park itself is a historic landmark, and we're beholden to landmark laws. So we don't always have a lot of flexibility in adding new amenities to the park. Like you have to make a case that whatever area of the park that we're making an amenity to has changed enough over time that it's like it can be proven why we need to make a change to it. Lakeside was a good example of that. We were able to really dramatically restore that area. I think when it comes to competing interests, like, it's like really it's the Parks Department that sets policy and enforces it, and we advocate on behalf of park users. So we work with like that, there's friends groups, there's council people, there's different people that come into play for when things come to the point where they can happen in the park. I think two good examples of that is the Kensington Dog Run. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but a friends group really advocated for a dog run in the parade ground. They got the support of the borough president at the time, the local city council members. The funds were able to come together. The land was able to be identified that could potentially be a dog run, and that came into play. The same thing's happening right now. We got funding through Brad Lander to put a new riding ring in the park, just north of the zoo, which is in design right now. But that came into play because there was advocacy from the community. It was on the radar of the local city council member. There was able to be like a precedent that could be seen for that use in the park. So it's it's kind of a mix of electeds and advocates in the community and the Parks Department kind of coming together and talking about use.
Well, so those are inputs, but I mean, is there one agency or entity who says, okay, I've heard all of your ideas, here's what we're going to do? I know probably back in my day it was Tupper Thomas, but who is it now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you asked that. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's the Parks Department that sets policy for use in the park, but it's in, our president is also the park administrator. So we do weigh in and we do have a say in that. Sorry, I can't be more specific for you. But I would say it's a partnership between the Alliance and the Parks Department, but ultimately it's a public park and it's owned by the Parks Department. So ultimately it's the Parks Department who determines these things.
Thank you, Victor. I've reached the end of board members and committee members who have hands raised. I have one member of the public with their hand up. May I call on them?
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Occupational hazard. I have somebody under the name Brooklyn Equine. I assume I know who that is, but I am going to ask you, please identify yourself. We do not allow anonymous comments. You can unmute yourself now. Brooklyn Equine.
You're gonna lose him. Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I was having a little bit of trouble getting on here, sorry.
Would you mind identifying yourself?
Oh, yes, sorry. My name is Sienna Quadrosi. I'm also here with John Quadrosi. We represent Brooklyn Equine at Prospect Park Stable. For those who don't know, we had taken over the stable and have been renovating and restoring the programs there over the last few years, now fully operational. We've been working to restore the riding programs in the park that have fallen into disrepair under the prior ownership. And And we wanted to ask about, rebuilding the ridership that was there before. For those who didn't know, it was kind of a toss-up between the safety of the riders and the horses because of the bridle paths had fallen into such disrepair. And there's a kind of disconnect, going back to what some of the other people were saying about competing interests in the park. A lot of safety concerns have come up over the last few years to make sure that not just horse riders, but also park goers can be in harmony together in a safe manner. And addressing things such as signage and some of the overgrowth of the paths that have fallen into disrepair over the years. A lot of them have even become unusable, and it's forced some of the horses to go onto the drives instead of the paths. And of course, horses poop and they go on the drives, and of course, park goers aren't happy about that. Of course, we try to clean it up as fast as we can, but of course, we can't get to everything. We don't always have a shovel in our hand at the times. And we really believe that allowing the horses and the poop to go back onto the paths is where it should be, and where we would like it to be. So we wanted to ask about those things, if there was any plans for those to get updated, and if we could participate in that as well, because we really would like to be a part of that process of restoring the ridership in the park and the paths as well, as was intended to be historically when the park was first designed.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know the state of the bridle trail is top of mind with the Parks Department. Again, there's their state of good repair funding that they get, and then they have some maintenance funds for maintaining areas of the park. They we can't really let any area of the park be unsafe. So I think the Parks Department is trying to make that more of a priority and a focus on that. There's also funds that have been held up that Councilmember Lander had secured through some type of funds that came through some type of project that were supposed to go towards the park for the bridle trail. So we're working to try to secure those funds. I think if you're interested in providing funding towards the care of the bridle trail, we have a relationship with all of you. I know you guys know the Alliance. You've known us for many, many, many years. So we can definitely talk offline. But had to get your involvement in kind of helping to fund some of those improvements. So I think right now what's happening is they're trying to figure out the funding and resources to be able to repair areas of the bridle trail that have fallen into disrepair. So we can talk offline. I think, John, we've emailed before, so hopefully you have my email address. But I can also talk to my colleagues and let them know of your interest in being involved.
I'd be happy to facilitate if necessary.
Yeah, we'd love to work with you, Jeffrey. We can, bullet everything out. I'm sorry, I said Jeffrey, Jeremy. We have everything all bulleted out, so clear and concise, and maybe prioritize what's the most important first, obviously.
Yeah, this is Deborah. So I'd say I think you have my contact information. You can just send it directly to me. But Jeremy, I appreciate you helping to facilitate that. That's kind of you to offer.
Happy to help.
All right, thank you.
Last call for hands. Victor, I see no additional hands.
All right, Deborah, Alexa, Alexis, I just want to thank you for joining us today. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for answering our questions. Just remember, we would like to see you again soon for some updates.
Yeah.
And if you need us, just give us a call.
Yeah, I'll definitely connect Jeremy with the offhand. I think, we welcome to have a representative from the Parks Committee come to our community committee meetings. I think we might send the information to you, Jeremy, but if for some reason you're not getting it, we can make sure you get it. We welcome your input and feedback and engagement. And we thank all of you for all of your questions and your interest in the park. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And if you could just forward the presentation, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, I want to get into a second topic, our park committee priorities going forward. We did have some discussions, as I stated before, with the capital expenses and expense budget. But I just want to get some ideas going forward on where we should 0 point our attention to. And I just want to, while I'm on this point, thank Joanna Borkin for kind of taking the lead on the sandbox in the playground. On that. So,
Victor, your audio is breaking up. You may want to turn off your video.
am I? How you hear me now?
Much better.
All right. So I'm just gonna again. I want to thank. I don't know if you heard me before, but I want to thank Joanne Borkins for kind of taking the lead on the sandbox and the playground at Sunset Park. So I just want to appreciate that. But I just want to get some ideas going forward where we should definitely prioritize what we do and who we should have at our meetings as we're going forward. So just raise your hand and we'll go down the list and we'll take some of your ideas.
Victor, so far the only hand up is mine.
So let's go. I hear from you.
Okay, and now I see others are joining in, but my microphone's open. So going to what was brought up at the previous agenda item, I met with a gentleman from New Yorkers for Parks. They are going to have a campaign coming up, the 1% for parks, which is regarding the New York City budget. But the annual bane of our capital requests is the fact that the Parks Department has no capital budget. So every request we have for the Parks Department, they give us the same response, which is go ask your elected officials. This would resolve that issue. This would give the Parks Department an actual capital budget. So they're not ready with the campaign for November, but possibly by December or January, they'll be ready to roll that out. And they would like to make a presentation before the committee.
We would definitely like to get them on the schedule. That would be nice.
So I have several other hands up. Would you like me to start calling them?
Yes, sir.
I have Sylvia Augusto first.
Hi, everybody. In regards to the walkthrough that we had on September 13th, I just feel that I personally made a mistake in not really walking through every single part of the park to make sure that there was nothing left behind, and there was a lot left behind. In regards to the handball court, there's 3 full cracks, and it was a player. I was like, I passed by and I said, how do you feel? How do you like it? And he's like, look at the ground. There's huge cracks. They just finished fixing that. And I felt bad because we walked towards the handball court, but we didn't walk in the handball court. In the playground, the children's playground. Thank God for Johanna for stepping up with the sandbox, because that was another thing. They had told us that they were going to have sand. Then they went and they filled it up with gravel. Then they emptied it and put it back with sand. But there's also inside the playground itself, there's different rails, different like fences, whatever it is, and they're getting rusty. This is a playground that maybe was built 3 years ago. The time is going by so fast that I don't have set dates, but that should not be happening in the playground. I think it's really dangerous for the kids. The steps, Johanna was walking up the steps, didn't follow her, should have followed her. The steps between on 43rd, the first tier to the second tier that they just did, that's falling apart. The entrance on 44th Street by 5th Avenue, that whole thing there was just done. That was just a new repair, a new project. and it's completely falling apart also. There's just too many things that need to be fixed. We can't keep on having projects and then they do it halfway or a quarter of the way and it falls apart. We're waiting for somebody to get hurt, somebody to sue the city. It's going to cost the city more money, the Parks Department more money. So why not just, focus on getting those things done? Because now the big project is going to be the rec center. And are we going to do the same thing? We're going to get a half job and it's not going to be good for our community. We've been waiting for all these things and we really need to get 100%, not 50%, not 40%. So yeah, that's pretty much it right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I will note that we did add all the pathways within Sunset Park to our recently approved capital budget items. I have Mary Eister next.
I'm going to be brief since I already spoke, but I think I would just take the comment I made earlier about who's making the decisions and the competing interests, but in a different angle. I wonder whether there's a way for this committee and the community board to get input from park users or would-be park users about what their interests and priorities are. I mean, I know what I care about. It's not necessarily this park, Sunset Park, but all the parks in our neighborhood are pretty heavily used. What do people want more of or less of or better of? And how can we get that information so that it's not just a handful of us kind of deciding what we think is important? I have no more to say.
Okay. Joan Body next.
My comments were going to also be about the walkways. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because I was going to say what you said, that the Parks Department doesn't have a budget. So I'll keep all of my questions and comments until we have the meeting in December and see what they come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. I have Dan Murphy next.
Thanks, Jeremy. I just wanted to point out, I think I made this point before at committee meetings, because Parks doesn't have a community relations bureau, the district supervisor is kind of the community liaison. And I think when a community board in the district holds a Parks Committee meeting, they should be in attendance as a matter of course. So if we could sort of repeat that message or reiterate it to the borough office.
So Dan, perhaps it's time for me to introduce Hannah.
Sorry, Hannah, I didn't see you.
Hey everyone, I'm hearing all your comments. I'm taking notes, okay?
I take back everything I just said. Literally do. But thank you. I'm sorry. I wasn't paying proper attention.
That's okay.
And you're so quiet, which is great. Thank you. I know you're taking notes. Ciao.
Victor, I see no additional panelist hands up. Can I throw it open to attendees as well?
Hey, wait. I wanted to say something, of course, but I was waiting.
Oh, okay. I don't see your hand, but please.
I was cooking, so I had to that's way too much information. Okay. I cannot be the only person who is a little bit nervous about the idea of giving the parks a capital budget when it costs, without some sort of investigation into where the money goes. The the fact that it took something like 5 years and ended up being like over $3 million for that playground. The amount of money that it costs to get all of this shoddy work and the timeline. I really hope that there's some, you know, some sort of oversight or insight to where the money goes. I want to I agree that I think, you know, one of the things, and just because I got cranky about the whole sandbox thing, and that's all it took. And I'm really glad that you know, we did get a community meeting together, which was important. It really was like the current playground users who made the decision about whether to like go forward with gravel or to put the sand back. And that I think was really an important part of the process, especially in our multilingual community and our to make sure that we really do have practices built in where we're getting community feedback in the languages that our community speaks, because we do have so many different users with interests.
Thank you, Johanna. I'll just say I was testifying in front of the City Council Committee about a bill yesterday about being able to get us translation services. So hopefully those resources will become available to us soon. I have no other panelists' hands up. Folks, if you are attendees, if you're not a member of this committee or a member of the board, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to call on you. Going once. Anybody who'd like to address the board? Going twice. I see a hand up, but it's a panelist. I have Sylvia Augusto.
I'm sorry. I thought it was, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. But in regards to everything that was said today, so what happens now? What's the next steps? Because I missed something, I don't know what, but what happens now? There's a budget that's coming up in December, is that it? I misunderstood.
That was about a potential meeting about a change to the city's policy. There's no budget coming up in December, and that might not be until the new year.
Got it. I just misunderstood. But in regards to what we were talking about early, what I was talking about earlier, what's the next steps with that?
Well, yeah, the things that we have discussed here, I mean, we have to bring it to the Parks Department. I on that meeting, that walkthrough, I did talk to Davey Ives, because the walkway and some of the bricks on the entrance was a question Jack J.C. had brought up. So I wanted to make sure I get an answer for his questions. And of course, as Jeremy stated before, we got to get our public officials involved with it. So I just think we might have to get a little more aggressive with whoever we have to get aggressive with this. To me, these are safety issues. Cracked sidewalks and handball courts, those stairways, and the rusty rails. We just got to get a little more aggressive on getting these things fixed, and getting some input from the public on some of the discussions we had on parks needs. I'm going to try to come up with some inventive ways if anybody else have any ideas. Even if I have to stand in front of one of the entrances with maybe some surveys, a clipboard to get some answers. But we just got to find some ways to get the community more engaged than just on these Zoom meetings.
Victor, I believe both of our council members are involved in participatory budgeting. And that seems like an ideal way for people to express themselves and then come out and vote. Perhaps rather than trying to duplicate that, we could help promote their efforts.
You know, whichever way is best to get it done is good for me. We just need to get, because I kind of think these are safety hazards. Playing handball with cracked sidewalks, you twist ankles and whatever. It's not fun running back and forth. You know?
Issues like that are safety items should not have to wait for capital. So point them out to me. I will bring them, or Hannah, and when she and I will discuss it, we will hopefully be able to get it done as quickly as possible rather than wait for the next capital budget.
All right. And I know there was some discussion about those handball courts possibly being done over again, or some kind of improvements to them. Again, maybe we need to have a meeting with the parks and have them put in front of us to discuss these issues again. You know? So, but I'm open to all suggestions, whatever the committee has that they want me to do. I'm open to all suggestions, and let's just get these things done.
So again, with regard to the handball courts and the paths, give me as specific as you can. Give me photographs if you can. I will reach out to Hannah, and maintenance issues we will get done as quickly as possible. Victor, if you don't mind, I'd like to just briefly read something from the Parks Department that we got today about a meeting coming up next week.
Okay.
Give me one moment to get it on my computer.
And I just want to acknowledge Gambino. I know he put a message.
I acknowledged him as well, and Johanna and a couple of others. I made sure to note on the attendance sheet.
I thank you.
So Greenwood Playground in Windsor Terrace, court improvements. There's a public input meeting coming up next week. These are Greenwood Playground's handball courts. Parks Department is sharing and discussing your ideas for the improvements to the courts at Greenwood Playground, which is funded by Councilmember Shahana Hanif. Forgive the dogs fighting next to me. It's taking place next Tuesday, November 15th at 6:30. It's a virtual meeting by Parks Department. We sent it out to our entire list this afternoon. If for some reason you have not gotten it in your inbox, or also please check your spam folder, because sometimes it does go there on the mass email. Please reach out to the community board. We're happy to get you the registration info for joining that meeting. If there are any questions about that, I will try to answer.
If you could send it to me, Joe, I don't see it on in my email.
Sure, we'll make sure that we send it out again tomorrow, because you're the second person who told me that. I have Hannah Hannah Basio from the Parks Department with her hand up.
Jeremy, I just want to let you know I put the registration link in the chat, just in case somebody, you have to register to participate in a meeting. Okay, I put it in the chat.
Thank you, and we're also going to email it out to our entire list again tomorrow. We'll make sure that everybody gets it. Thank you, Hannah. Victor, I see no additional hands up.
All right, so having no additional hands, no additional comments, I would like to call the meeting, adjourn the meeting at this time. I want to thank everybody for participation and input, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Victor.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.